If anyone asks, tell them you've already eaten, and don't you dare lift those eyes from the floor when he walks through the door. Your insignificance is the only virtue you have left. Girl, understood? Old Ophelia's voice didn't need to shout to cut you to the bone. It was a low, hissing whisper, like the cold wind seeping through the window cracks of that immense kitchen on Trindade Station. Anna just nodded, clenching her calloused hands against her grubby apron, feeling her stomach rumble, a painful note of protest. There was a plate on the solid timber table, but it wasn't for her. It was the boss's leftovers, potato peelings. Scraps of fat the new boss had left on his plate, a bit of rice that had fallen on the tablecloth and was scooped up by hand. Yes, ma'am, Miss Ophelia, I understand, Anna whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes fixed on the housekeeper's fine leather boots. Good. Now eat that quickly before I throw it to the pigs. At least they're profitable. You, Anna, you're just a drain and a disgrace. Ophelia turned her back, her dark silk skirt rustling with the authority of someone who'd run these lands for 30 years, since before Anna was born. The door slammed shut. Silence returned to the kitchen, broken only by the crackling of wood in the stove and the sound of fine rain starting to fall outside, blessing the earth but chilling the bones of those without the warmth of an embrace. Anna looked at the plate. Hunger has no pride, folks. Hunger is an ancient, cruel creature that lives inside us and doesn't take no for an answer. With trembling hands, she picked up that leftover food. There were no utensils for her. Anna put a cold piece of potato to her mouth, closing her eyes to avoid seeing her own humiliation. She swallowed her tears along with the dry food. It was at that exact moment, when dignity seemed to have fled far from that station, that the back door opened. It wasn't the door Ophelia had left through, but the one leading to the sunroom. The sound of heavy boots, yet with a firm step, echoed on the hydraulic tiles. Anna froze. The piece of stale bread stopped halfway to her mouth. She looked up, defying the order, and saw him, Charles, the heir, the man who had spent 10 years in the city studying law and who had returned to take over the Trindade Station empire after his father's death. He stood there, his white linen shirt slightly damp from the rain, his dark hair disheveled, and a look Anna had never seen in anyone of that class, a look of shock mixed with deep sadness. He looked at Anna, then at the plate of overturned scraps, then at her hands, stained with soot from the stove, clutching the food as if it was stolen treasure. What? What is this? Charles's voice was deep, filling the room, but there was no anger in it, only incredulity. Anna dropped the food back onto the plate, as if it had burned her fingers. She cowered, trying to make herself smaller than she already was, trying to disappear into the shadows cast by the kerosene lamp. Forgive me, Mr. Charles. Forgive me. I was hungry. Miss Ophelia said I could. I didn't want to dirty your sight, sir. Charles took 2 steps forward. The lamplight illuminated his face. He didn't look like a boss about to punish a servant. He looked like a man witnessing a crime against humanity happening inside his own home. Are you eating what's left from my plate? He asked, each word coming out slow, painful. It's good food, sir. I'm grateful. God bless the bounty of Trindade Station. Anna replied quickly, fear making her heart pound in her throat. Charles closed his eyes for a second and took a deep breath. When he opened them, they shone, not with tears, but with a fierce determination. He walked to the table, pulled out a chair, the chair Ophelia used to supervise the cooks, and sat facing Anna. Stop, he said softly. Don't eat that ever again. But, sir, what's your name? He interrupted her, leaning forward, ignoring the dirty table, ignoring the soot, ignoring the social chasm that existed between the owner of 1,000 acres of land and the girl who slept in the back room. An-Nasir. Anna. He repeated the name as if tasting it on his tongue. Anna, look at me. She obeyed, trembling. Charles's eyes were the color of fertile earth after rain. They were eyes that saw. For the first time in years, Anna felt that someone saw her. Not as a tool for work, not as a nuisance, but as a person. No one, not even an animal, should eat what's been thrown out in this house while I'm in charge, Charles said. And then, he did something unthinkable. He reached out and lightly touched Anna's arm. You're trembling. Is it from cold or fear? A bit of everything, sir, she confessed, a solitary tear escaping and tracing a clean path down her dirty face. Charles stood abruptly. The chair scraped the floor with a sharp sound. Come with me. What? No, sir. Miss Ophelia will kill me. I can't leave the kitchen at this hour. I am the owner of Trindade Station, Anna, and I'm saying, come with me now. Anna's heart raced. What would he do? Take her to the living room? Expel her? But there was something in his voice. It wasn't a boss's order. It was a cry for help from a soul that had just awakened to reality. And it was there, in that suspended moment between fear and hope, that Anna and Charles's destiny was sealed. Not with a kiss, not with a promise of eternal love, but with a plate of denied food and an outstretched hand. Well, folks, doesn't your heart just skip a beat? Imagine the despair of that girl, Anna, having to eat scraps, and the surprise of that young man, Charles, discovering such cruelty under his own roof. How many times do we judge those who have a lot, thinking they have no heart? And how many times do we suffer in silence, thinking no one sees our pain, but God sees, and sometimes He uses the most twisted paths to cross two lives. If you've felt the chill of injustice, or if you believe the world turns and today's humiliation can be tomorrow's honor, I ask you now with all my heart, subscribe to our Heartfelt Tales channel. Give this video a thumbs up, because it helps this story reach more hearts that need hope. And tell me in the comments where in this great big country of ours you're watching Anna and Charles's story from. I want to send you a big hug. Let's see what Charles will do now, because I have a feeling Miss Ophelia won't like any of this. Trindade Station wasn't just a piece of land, it was a kingdom. Deep in the bush, where the rolling hills stretched out in green waves as far as the eye could see, the property was famous for its prime beef, the black gold that had sustained generations of Charles's family. The homestead, a grand old colonial house with white walls and blue window frames, stood atop the highest hill, watching over the valley like a sleeping giant. But like any kingdom, this one also had its dark secrets, and Anna knew the darkness well. She arrived at the station as a little girl, an orphan, lost both her mum and dad, brought by a distant uncle who owed favors to the old man, Mr. Thornton, Charles's father. She's good for light work, her uncle had said before vanishing down the dusty road, leaving behind a 1-2-year-old girl in a faded calico dress and a pair of frightened eyes. Since then, Anna had grown up amongst the pots and pans, the laundry tub, and old Ophelia's sharp orders. Ophelia, the housekeeper, was a dry woman, not just in body, but in spirit. Widowed early, childless, she'd poured all her bitterness into running the house. For her, order and cleanliness were worth more than any servant's life. And Anna, with her quiet youth and a beauty that was starting to bloom despite the dirt and rags, was the favorite target of her contempt. Ophelia saw in Anna something she herself had lost, the possibility of being loved, softness, light, and nothing bothers darkness more than a glimmer of light. Charles, on the other hand, was a mystery to Anna. He'd left for the city when she was still a child. The news that reached the station spoke of a studious, serious young man who preferred books to parties. When old Mr. Thornton passed away 3 months ago, Charles returned, but he returned different from what everyone expected. He wasn't arrogant, didn't shout, didn't ride around cracking a whip. He was silent. He spent hours in the library or walking through the paddocks with that distant look of someone carrying an invisible weight. They said in the kitchen that he'd lost a fiancée in the city to a sudden fever. They said he'd returned with a closed-off heart, but Anna had never dared to look at him directly until that night. Back in the kitchen scene, the rain outside was getting heavier, drumming hard on the corrugated iron roof. The sound of running water seemed to wash the world. But inside that house, the tension was palpable. Charles walked ahead, his footsteps echoing in the long corridor that connected the service area to the main dining room. Anna followed, cowering, trying to tread lightly so as not to dirty the Persian rug that covered the polished timber floorboards. She felt ashamed of her clothes, her smoky smell, her rough hands. As they reached the dining room, the table was still set, though dinner had already been served and cleared. The crystal chandelier hung from the high ceiling, its candles casting dancing, shadows on walls adorned with portraits of stern ancestors. "Sit," Charles said, pointing to one of the high-backed chairs, upholstered in crimson velvet. "Mr. Charles, please," Anna pleaded, her hands clasped in prayer. "Oh, if Miss Ophelia sees me sitting in the boss's chair, Miss Ophelia works for me, Anna, and this house is mine. Sit." Anna sat on the edge of the chair, ready to jump and run at any moment. The velvet was soft, warm. She'd never felt anything so luxurious against her skin. Charles went to the side table. There was a silver fruit bowl full of seasonal fruit and a covered platter with a linen cloth. He lifted the cloth. Fresh damper, cornbread, cured cheese. He picked up a fine porcelain plate, the kind Anna only ever touched to wash with extreme care, under threat of a pay deduction if she broke it, and began to serve. He placed 2 thick slices of cheese, a generous piece of damper, and a shiny red apple. Then he poured a glass of fresh milk from a crystal jug. He placed the plate in front of Anna. "Eat," he said. Eat like a person, not a shadow. Anna looked at the food. The smell of the cheese and damper filled her nostrils, making her mouth water with a painful intensity. She looked at Charles. He was leaning against the side table, arms crossed, watching her. There was no pity in his gaze. There was justice. "Why are you doing this, sir?" she asked, her voice a mere thread. Charles sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Because I spent the last 10 years studying laws, rights, about how the world should be just, and I come home to my own house and find this." He gestured towards the kitchen they had come from. "I find barbarity under my roof. I lost my appetite, Anna. Lost my appetite for food, for life, for everything since I came back. But seeing you eat those scraps, that gave me a different kind of hunger. A hunger to do what's right." Anna didn't understand everything he said, but she understood the feeling. With trembling hands, she picked up the damper. The first bite was like a warm hug from within, the flavor of the corn, the softness. She closed her eyes and, unable to control herself, began to cry. She ate and cried. Thick tears fell onto the porcelain plate, mixing with the cheese. Charles didn't move. He just watched, feeling a lump in his throat he hadn't felt in a long time. The girl's pain was so pure, so raw, that it broke through the armor of indifference he'd built around himself after his fiancée's death. When Anna finished, she wiped her face with her dress sleeve, embarrassed. "Thank you, sir. God bless you twofold. I've never eaten anything so good." "Tomorrow," Charles said, his voice firm. "You won't be working in the kitchen anymore." Anna's eyes widened, panic returning. "Are you going to send me away, sir?" "For heaven's sake, Mr. Charles, I have nowhere to go. The world out there is dangerous for a girl alone. I'll do anything. I'll clean the pigsty. Quiet, Anna." Charles approached and, in an unthinking gesture, held her hands, which were gesticulating frantically. His hands were warm and soft, hers cold and calloused. The contrast was shocking. "I'm not sending you away. I said you won't be working in the kitchen anymore. You'll work here in the main house, helping in the library, looking after the flowers, serving at the table. But Miss Ophelia, she says I'm clumsy, that I'm not fit to be near visitors. Miss Ophelia will have to learn that I decide who serves in this house and who doesn't." At that moment, quick, hard footsteps were heard in the corridor. The dining room door burst open. Ophelia stood there. She wore a dark silk robe over her nightgown, and her gray hair was tied back in a severe braid. Her face was pale with contained fury. She looked at the scene. The boss, the heir to Trindade Station, holding the dirty housemaid's hands, sitting at the main table with a fine porcelain plate in front of her. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with electricity. "Mr. Charles," Ophelia said, her voice trembling with indignation, "may I know what this spectacle means? This creature sitting at your late mother's table?" Anna tried to pull her hands away, but Charles held them firm. He turned slowly to the housekeeper, without letting go of Anna. "It means, Ophelia, that the rules of Trindade Station have changed. From today, Anna will no longer eat scraps, and from tomorrow, she leaves the kitchen and becomes my personal assistant for running the house." Ophelia took a step back, as if she'd been slapped. Her small, dark eyes shot daggers at Anna with such intense hatred that the girl felt a chill down her spine. "You don't know what you're doing," Ophelia hissed. "That girl is cursed. She brings bad luck. Her uncle left her here because he couldn't stand her. She has bad blood, Mr. Charles. Mixing with that sort of person, it'll stain the family name." "What stains my family's name, Ophelia, is cruelty," Charles retorted, letting go of Anna's hands and standing to his full height. "And I will not tolerate cruelty here anymore. Prepare a room for her. A guest room." "A guest room?" Ophelia almost shrieked. "For the dishwasher? For Anna? And if you're not satisfied with my orders, Ophelia, the road out is the same one that brought you here 30 years ago." Ophelia pressed her lips together until they turned white. She knew when she had lost a battle, but the war was far from over. She looked at Anna one last time, a gaze that promised silent, slow, painful revenge. "As you wish, sir," she said with a mocking curtsy. "But don't say I didn't warn you when disaster comes knocking. Remember this night." Ophelia spun on her heels and left, leaving a trail of old perfume and rancor in the air. Anna was paralyzed. A guest room, personal assistant. It seemed like a dream, but the fear of Ophelia was a very real nightmare. "Sir, she'll hate me forever," Anna whispered. "Let her hate," Charles said, looking at the door through which the housekeeper had left. "Her hatred can't touch you while I'm here. Now go. Go to your little room tonight. Get your things. Tomorrow is a new day." Anna stood up, her legs wobbly. She gave an awkward curtsy. "Thank you, Mr. Charles. Thank you. She ran to the kitchen, her heart beating wildly. As she crossed the dark corridor, she couldn't stop thinking about Charles's eyes. For the first time in her life, Anna felt she wasn't alone in the world, but she also felt the weight of Ophelia's threat. Bad blood, she had said. Anna didn't know what that meant, but she knew the housekeeper would do anything to prove herself right. That night, lying on her hard cot in the back room, listening to the rain, Anna didn't sleep. She touched the hand Charles had held. It still felt warm. Meanwhile, upstairs, Charles watched the rain from his bedroom window. He lit a cigar, something he rarely did. The image of Anna eating the scraps wouldn't leave his head. There was a wounded dignity in her that reminded him of his own pain. He had lost the woman he loved. Anna had lost everything since birth. Perhaps, he thought, exhaling smoke into the cold air, perhaps we can save each other. Or perhaps Ophelia is right, and I'm just bringing trouble into the house. He didn't know. But in the housekeeper's room, by the light of a candle, almost at its end, Ophelia wrote a letter. It wasn't a mysterious letter to send out, but notes in her expense diary where she controlled everything. But on the last page, she wrote only one sentence, her handwriting shaky with rage. The weed must be cut at the root before it chokes the flower. Anna won't be here by the next full moon. The next day dawned with a pale sun, trying to break through the grey clouds. Trindade Station woke to the crowing of the roosters and the lowing of cattle in the paddock. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the homestead, but this time Anna wasn't by the stove, straining it. She stood in the middle of the hall, holding her bundle of clothes, 2 old dresses and a broken comb, waiting. The other maids passed by her, whispering, casting sideways glances. The news had traveled fast. The kitchen scullery maid was going to become a lady's companion. Envy sleeps lightly and wakes early. Charles came down the stairs, dressed for work out on the station, with riding boots and his hat in hand. He stopped when he saw Anna. She had tried to do her hair, taming her unruly hair with rusty hairpins, and washed her face with ash soap until her skin was red. "Good morning, Anna," he said, his voice echoing in the hall. "Good morning, Mr. Charles. Come, I'll show you where you'll be staying, and then I want you to accompany me to town. We need to buy decent clothes for you." A murmur ran through the corridor where the maids were peeking. New clothes, bought by the boss. Anna felt her face flush. "Oh, sir, you don't have to. I can mend." "Anna?" He cut her off, but with a slight smile at the corner of his lips. "You now represent the main house of Trindade Station, and I don't want patching things up in my life. No more patching things up. Let's start fresh." He extended his arm for her to take, like a lady. Anna looked at his arm. "Ruga Anna, Ruga Hawe, Ruga fabric." It was an abyss, but Charles waited. With her heart in her mouth, she lightly touched his arm. At the top of the stairs, hidden in the shadows of the mezzanine, Ophelia watched. Her eyes were slits of ice. She saw the touch, saw Anna's shy smile, and saw the protection in Charles's gesture. "Enjoy it while it lasts, girl," Ophelia whispered to the shadows. "Because the higher you climb, the harder you fall, and I'll make sure you shatter into 1,000 pieces." What Anna and Charles didn't know was that Trindade Station held secrets within its walls, and Ophelia knew every one of them. Secrets about Charles's family's past, and perhaps secrets about Anna's own origins, which even she didn't know. As the buggy was getting ready to take them to town, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of a storm. Love might be blossoming from the improbable, but hatred was already deeply rooted, just waiting for the first drop of rain to bloom into thorns. And so the buggy departed, kicking up dust on the red dirt road, carrying a man seeking redemption and a woman seeking survival, unaware that they were, in fact, heading towards the greatest challenge of their lives. The red dirt road that connected Trindade Station to the nearest town was lined with golden wattle trees, which at that time of year exploded in vibrant yellow, covering the ground like a golden carpet woven by angels. But Anna didn't see the beauty of the landscape. Sitting on the buggy seat next to Charles, she kept her hands clasped in her lap, her knuckles white from so much tension. The sway of the vehicle made her shoulder lightly brush against his arm from time to time, and with each touch, she felt an electric shock run down her spine, a mix of dread and forbidden fascination. Charles, for his part, kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, guiding the horse with firm, experienced hands. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken words, of questions that hung in the dusty air. "You've never been to town, Anna?" he asked without taking his eyes off the road, his deep voice breaking her trance. Anna jumped. "Only when I first arrived, sir, with my uncle. But I was little, and I was crying a lot. I didn't see anything. After that, Miss Ophelia always said a servant's place was within the walls, that the street was perdition. Charles clenched his jaw. With each new revelation about Anna's life, Ophelia's image became more monstrous in his mind. How could someone trap a bird and convince it the sky was dangerous? The street isn't perdition, Anna. The street is the world, and the world belongs to everyone, not just those with a family name. They arrived in town just before midday. It was a simple settlement, with whitewashed houses and an imposing church in the town square. Movement stopped when the Trindade buggy pulled up outside old Mr. Thompson's general store. Men doffed their hats. Women whispered behind improvised fans. Seeing young Charles Trindade was already an event. Seeing him accompanied by a girl in servant's clothes in the front seat, not in the cargo bed, was a silent scandal. Charles got down and, ignoring the stares, walked around and offered his hand to Anna. "Come." Anna hesitated. The cobblestone street seemed to burn. She felt people's gazes like needles on her skin. They know, she thought. They know I'm nobody. They know I'm dirty. But Charles's hand remained there, firm, waiting. She took it. As she stepped down, she tripped slightly on the hem of her worn skirt, and Charles steadied her by the waist for a brief second. It was enough for the murmur in the square to grow louder. Inside the general store, the smell of cured meats, rolls of fabric, and general goods mingled in an aroma that, to Anna, was the smell of richness. Mr. Thompson, a short, bald man with a waxed mustache, rushed to attend to them, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mr. Charles, what an honor. To what do we owe this visit? Do you need tools, seeds? I need dresses, Thompson. For Miss Anna." The shopkeeper looked Anna up and down, with a look of disdain he couldn't quite hide in time. "For her?" Thompson let out a nervous laugh. "Miss Charles, with all due respect, we have plain calico in the back. Great for servants' uniforms. Cheap, and it wears beautifully." The air in the store chilled. Charles took a step forward, approaching the counter. His voice dropped a tone, becoming dangerously calm. "I didn't ask for uniforms, Thompson. I asked for dresses, and I don't want what's in the back. I want to see the best you have. Light fabrics, light colors, and shoes. She needs shoes that won't hurt her feet." Mr. Thompson swallowed hard, realizing his mistake. The Trindade's money supported half that town's trade. Of course. My apologies, sir. This way, please." The next hour was a blur for Anna. She was led to a corner of the shop where the fine fabrics were displayed. Charles didn't understand women's fashion, but he understood dignity. He pointed to a light blue fabric, the color of the morning sky, and another in a soft cream shade, with tiny embroidered flowers. "That blue," he said. "It matches a..." He paused, looking at Anna, who was cowering in a corner. "It matches freedom." When Anna emerged from the makeshift changing room wearing the blue dress, the store went silent. The cut was simple, but the fabric draped softly over her slender body, highlighting a natural elegance that the rags had hidden. The blue lit up her tan skin and made her brown eyes look like liquid honey. She walked to the large oval mirror in the center of the shop. For the first time in 20 years, Anna saw herself not the servant, not the orphan, not the farmhand. She saw a woman. She brought her hands to her face, touching her own cheeks, incredulous. It's me," she whispered, her voice choked. "Mr. Charles, it's really me." Charles watched from afar, leaning against a pile of sacks of goods. His heart, which he swore was dead and buried with his wife, gave a strange, painful, living lurch. She was beautiful, not a salon beauty, artificial and powdered, but a wild, resilient beauty, like a flower blooming from a rock crevice. "It's you, Anna," he replied softly. "It's who you've always been. It's just that now the world can see." Anna began to cry, not from sadness, but from a relief so profound it hurt. It was the cry of someone shedding heavy armor after a lifetime of carrying it. The return to Trindade Station was different. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Anna, now dressed in blue and wearing new sensible shoes, felt like a different person. But as the station gates approached, the old fear began to creep back into her stomach. Ophelia would be waiting, and she was. When the buggy stopped in front of the homestead, the housekeeper was on the veranda, standing like a salt statue. Beside her, two other maids, Mary and Joan, peeked with wide eyes. Charles got down and helped Anna. As her feet, shod in new shoes, touched the ground, Ophelia descended the veranda steps. Her gaze swept Anna from head to toe, pausing on the fine fabric of the dress. A cold, almost imperceptible smile curved her thin lips. "I see the outing was fruitful," Ophelia said. her voice dripping with irony. The Cinderella of the cattle station got her princess clothes, but beware, Mr. Charles. New clothes don't change the soul of the one who wears them. What's born crooked, dies crooked. Keep your poisonous proverbs to yourself, Ophelia, Charles retorted, walking past her and guiding Anna inside. Anna, go to your new room. Rest. Tomorrow we'll start organizing the library. Anna climbed the stairs, feeling Ophelia's gaze burning her back. The guest room was simple, but to Anna, it seemed like a palace. It had a bed with clean, fresh-smelling sheets, a window overlooking the garden, and most importantly, a door she could close. That night, Anna didn't dine in the kitchen. Charles ordered a tray to be taken to her room. It was the first time Anna had eaten alone in peace, without having to swallow her food in a hurry. But the peace at Trindade Station was a fragile fabric, about to tear. The next day, the household routine changed. Anna, instead of scrubbing floors, was in the library, an immense room, smelling of old paper and timber. Charles was there, sitting at the desk, going over ledgers. I don't read very well, sir, Anna confessed, standing before an immense bookshelf. I can string together the letters the priest taught me when I was a girl. Charles lifted his eyes from the papers. That's all right, you'll learn. But for now, I need you to dust these books and organize them by size and color. My head's a mess, Anna. I need at least the space around me to be in order. They spent the morning like that, working in silence, a companionable silence. From time to time, Charles would stop and watch her. There was a lightness in her movements that he hadn't noticed before, and Anna, in turn, watched her boss. She saw the lines of worry on his forehead, the shadow of sadness that never left his eyes. You miss her a lot, don't you? The question escaped Anna's mouth before she could stop herself. Charles froze. The air in the library grew heavy. Who? Your fiancée. They say in the kitchen that you loved her more than anything. Charles slammed the ledger shut. He stood up and walked to the window, turning his back to Anna. I did. She was all the good I had. When she died, she took my faith with her. I looked at God and only saw a tyrant who'd robbed me of my only joy. He turned, his eyes glistening. That's why I let this house fall apart. Anna, that's why I let Ophelia take over everything. I didn't care, until I saw you eating those scraps. Anna felt a tightening in her chest. His pain was palpable, physical. My pain blinded me, he continued. But your pain opened my eyes. It's strange, isn't it? My grandmother used to say God works in mysterious ways. Sir, maybe we need to be broken to be put back together in a better way. Charles smiled, a sad but genuine smile. You're wise, Anna. For someone who says she can't read, you read people's souls better than any doctor. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. Ophelia entered, carrying a tray with coffee. Her face was a mask of efficiency, but her eyes gleamed with a contained malice. Excuse me, Mr. Charles, the coffee. And oh, sir, I needed to ask you, have you seen your late mother's mother-of-pearl rosary, the one with the gold cross? Charles frowned. My mother's rosary? It's in the velvet box in my room on the dresser. No one touches it. Well, then, Ophelia sighed theatrically. I was cleaning your room this morning, as I always do, and the box was open and empty. Charles's blood ran cold. That rosary was the only physical remembrance he had of his mother, a priceless family heirloom. What do you mean empty? No one enters my room besides you, Ophelia. Exactly, sir. No one entered until yesterday. Ophelia slowly turned her face and fixed her eyes on Anna. Yesterday, while you were in the bath, I saw Anna coming out of the main bedroom corridor. She said she was lost, looking for the guest room. Anna felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. That's a lie, Anna cried, terror seizing her voice. I never went into your room, sir. I went straight to my room, as you ordered. Quiet. Charles raised his hand. Ophelia, this is a very serious accusation. Are you saying Anna stole my mother's rosary? I'm not saying anything, sir. I'm saying the rosary disappeared the same day a stranger, used to destitution, gained access to the homestead. Temptation is the devil whispering in the ear of the poor, Mr. Charles. Gold is gold. Charles looked at Anna. She was pale, trembling, her eyes wide with terror. It can't be, he thought. She wouldn't do that. But the seed of doubt, expertly planted by Ophelia, began to germinate. He knew human misery. He knew hunger and desperation made good people commit unthinkable acts. Anna, Charles began, his voice faltering. Did you see this rosary? No, sir. I swear on my mother's soul. I've never seen it. I don't even know what mother of pearl is. Then there will be no problem if we search her room, will there? Ophelia suggested with a victorious smile on her lips. If she's innocent, nothing will be found, and I'll beg your forgiveness on my knees. Anna looked at Charles, pleading with her eyes for him to protect her, to believe her without needing that humiliation. But Charles was a man of the law, a man of evidence, and the fear of having lost his mother's keepsake spoke louder at that moment. "We'll search the room," Charles decided, his voice hard. The procession followed to the guest room. Anna walked behind, crying silently. Ophelia marched ahead like a general. As they entered the room, everything seemed in order. The new dress was folded on the chair, the bed made. Ophelia went straight to the small dresser beside the bed. She opened the first drawer, nothing. She opened the second, nothing. Then she bent down and looked under the mattress. "What's this here?" Ophelia said, pulling out something that was poorly hidden between the bed frame and the straw mattress. She raised her hand. Hanging from her fingers, gleaming in the sunlight that streamed through the window, was the mother-of-pearl rosary with the gold cross. Anna's world stopped. The sound disappeared. She only saw the glint of the gold and Charles's face transforming. Charles looked at the object, then at Anna. His expression wasn't one of anger. It was worse. It was one of disappointment. A deep, devastating disappointment of someone who'd opened their home and heart only to be betrayed. "Anna," he whispered, his voice broken. "Why? I gave you everything. I gave you food. I gave you clothes. I gave you dignity. Why did you steal the one thing I couldn't lose?" "I didn't steal it," Anna cried, falling to her knees. "I swear, Mr. Charles, I never saw this. She put it there. It was her." Anna pointed at Ophelia, but the housekeeper maintained a perfectly rehearsed expression of shock, putting her hand to her chest. "Lord help me. You see, Mr. Charles, besides being a thief, she's a liar and a slanderer. That's what you get for bringing riffraff like that into your home." Charles took the rosary from Ophelia's hand. He clutched it against his chest, closing his eyes. The pain of betrayal mixed with confusion. Anna seemed so sincere in her despair, but the evidence was right there. "Get out," Charles said without looking at Anna. "Sir, please, get out." Charles's shout made the window panes rattle. "Get out of my room. Get out of my sight. Go back to the kitchen. Go back to the pigsty. Go wherever you want. But get out of my face before I lose my temper." Ophelia smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but that illuminated her dark soul. She had won. Anna stood up, tears blinding her vision. She didn't grab her new clothes. She didn't grab anything. She ran from the room, stumbling down the stairs, crossing the kitchen under the curious stares of the other maids, and running out into the rain that was starting to fall again outside. She ran to the old abandoned shed, far from the homestead, and threw herself onto the hay, sobbing until she had no breath left. The dream was over. Cinderella had turned back into a pumpkin before midnight. But as Anna cried her misfortune, alone and unjustly accused, she didn't realize she wasn't entirely alone. In the dark corner of the shed, a pair of eyes watched her. They weren't human eyes. They were watchful, curious eyes that had witnessed her arrival. And in the homestead, Charles locked himself in the library with a bottle of whiskey. He looked at the rosary on the table. Something didn't quite fit. The knot in the handkerchief where the rosary was wrapped was a fisherman's bend, a complex knot. Anna could barely tie her apron. How would she know a knot like that? The doubt, small and persistent, began to gnaw at Charles's certainty, but his wounded pride screamed louder. Outside, the storm was brewing, mirroring the chaos in the hearts of the two protagonists. And Ophelia, in her room, caressed an old key she wore around her neck, the key to a secret far greater than a simple theft, a secret that involved Anna's birth and the past of Trindade Station. "Well, you little bastard," Ophelia whispered, extinguishing the candle. "Your hell is just beginning." Trindade Station's old shed was a place of shadows and the smell of aged hay. The rain, which had once seemed like a blessing, now sounded like a punishment, drumming the corrugated iron roof with a fury that prevented any thought of peace. Anna was huddled in a corner on a pile of dry straw, hugging her knees. The blue dress, the one that hours before had made her feel like a queen, was now stained with mud and tears, a cruel reminder of a dream that had lasted less than the morning dew. She didn't just feel cold on her skin. The greater cold came from within. It was the ice of injustice. How could God allow that? She, who had always prayed, who had always accepted her fate with her head bowed, was now thrown into the mud like a thief. "Why, my God?" she whispered into the darkness. "What did I do to deserve so much hatred?" It was then that a hoarse voice, rough as stones in a riverbed, replied from the shadows. "It wasn't God who did this, girl. It was the wickedness of men and the malice of a woman who has the devil in her heart." Anna jumped. her heart pounding. From the shadows emerged a hunched figure leaning on a wooden staff. It was old Ted, the station's longest-serving hand. Ted looked after the horses and lived in a small room attached to the shed. He had skin wrinkled like tree bark and eyes that, despite cataracts, seemed to see beyond the obvious. "Old Ted, you startled me." The old man approached, limping, and held out a steaming enamel mug. "Drink up. It's coffee with treacle. It'll warm your soul." Anna took the mug with trembling hands. The warmth of the liquid burned as it went down, but brought immediate comfort. "Do you believe me, old Ted?" she asked, her voice choked. "Everyone says I stole it." Ted let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Stole? You haven't got the guts to steal an egg from a chook, lass. I know people, and I know snakes." He sat on a bale of hay facing her. "I saw, Anna." Anna paused, the mug halfway to her mouth. "Saw what?" "I saw Miss Ophelia entering your room this morning, right after you left for the library with the young boss. She was looking around, like a possum sneaking into the chook pen. She was carrying something in her hand, wrapped in a handkerchief." Anna's eyes filled with tears again, but this time with relief. "Someone new?" "She wasn't crazy. You saw? Then you can tell Mr. Charles. He'll believe you, sir. He respects you." Ted lowered his head, the weight of the years curving his shoulders even more. "The young boss is blind, lass, blind with grief for his mother, blind with that old witch's silver tongue. If I speak, she'll kick me out, and I'm old, Anna. I have nowhere to go. I'll die if I leave here." Silence fell heavy between them. Anna understood. Courage is a luxury not everyone can afford. She couldn't demand that old man risk his roof for her. "I understand, old Ted. Thank you for the coffee. But listen," the old man said, raising a gnarled finger. "A lie has short legs, but it runs fast. The truth limps, but it always gets there. The young boss isn't stupid. He has his father's blood, but his mother's heart. Give it time, and don't leave here. If you run, it'll look like guilt. Stay, hold on. The storm always passes." Meanwhile, in the homestead, the storm seemed to have settled inside the library. Charles was sitting in the leather armchair, the mother-of-pearl rosary on the table, next to the whiskey bottle he'd barely touched. His eyes were fixed on the handkerchief where the rosary had been found. The knot? That cursed knot. Charles picked up the handkerchief and undid it. Then he tried to tie it again. His fingers, accustomed to pens and books, fumbled. That wasn't a common knot. It was a fisherman's bend, a knot that tightened the more you pulled. Anna can barely tie her apron, he thought. How would she know a knot like that? The doubt, small and persistent, was a seed Ophelia hadn't managed to uproot. Charles stood up, restless. He needed answers. He left the library and went upstairs, heading towards Ophelia's room. He wouldn't knock. He was the owner of that house. As he turned the doorknob, he found the door locked. "Ophelia," he called. "Coming, Mr. Charles." Her voice was muffled, followed by sounds of drawers being hastily closed. When the housekeeper opened the door, she was in her silk robe and a nervous smile. "Do you need anything, sir? A tea to calm your nerves?" "It was a difficult day. Discovering we raise snakes, eh?" "Where did you learn to tie knots, Ophelia?" Charles asked suddenly, stepping into the room without asking permission. Ophelia blinked, confused. "Knots? What kind of question is that?" "Sir, I'm a housekeeper. I know how to tie knots in sheets, in curtains." "I'm not talking about regular knots, Ophelia. I'm talking about a sailor's knot, a fisherman's bend, the knot in the handkerchief with the rosary." Ophelia's mask wavered for a split second. Her eyes darted to an old photograph on the dresser. A man in a merchant marine uniform. Her late husband. My husband taught me, sir, you know, many years ago, but what does that have to do with anything? The girl must have learned from some vagabond on the road before coming here. People of that sort learn all kinds of tricks. The explanation was plausible, but Charles's instinct screamed that it wasn't right. He looked around the room. It was impeccable, like everything Ophelia touched. But there was something, a smell, the smell of burning paper. He looked at the unlit fireplace, but saw fresh ashes. "What were you burning, Ophelia?" "Old papers, sir. Old accounts. Cleaning. You know I like everything in order." Charles stared at her. There was a wall between them, a wall built of 30 years of service, and a trust that was now fractured. "I will discover the truth, Ophelia, and if I discover you framed that girl, there won't be a road long enough for you to escape my wrath." Ophelia lifted her chin, recovering her arrogance. "You're tired, sir. Grief and the drink are clouding your judgment. Go to sleep, Mr. Charles. Tomorrow, when the thief is gone, peace will reign in this house once more." Charles left, slamming the door. He couldn't sleep. The image of Anna on her knees, swearing innocence, burned in his mind more than the whiskey. The night wore on, and the rain turned into a full-blown storm. Lightning slashed across the sky, illuminating the paddocks as if it were daylight for brief seconds. The wind howled, rattling the windows of the homestead. In the shed, Anna didn't sleep. The noise was deafening. Suddenly, between one thunderclap and another, she heard something. It wasn't the wind. It was a whinny, a cry of an animal in panic. She got up and ran to the shed door. Old Ted was already there, trying to put on a ripped raincoat. "What is it, Old Ted?" "The creek. The creek's burst its banks. The fence to the colt's paddock. It's given way. There's an animal in the water." Without thinking twice, without remembering she was barefoot, without remembering she'd been expelled, Anna ran into the rain. "Girl, come back. It's dangerous," Ted cried. But Anna was already a blue blur in the darkness. She ran towards the creek that cut across the property. The muddy water roared, carrying branches and stones. And there, in the middle of the current, caught on a tree root, was Whirlwind, Charles's favorite colt. A black, spirited animal he was personally training. The colt whinnied, eyes wide with terror, the water rising to its neck. Anna didn't stop. The mud sucked at her feet. Thorns tore her new dress, but she plunged into the icy water. The current hit her chest, almost knocking her over. "Easy, Whirlwind, easy," she cried, fighting the force of the water. In the homestead, Charles was at the window when he saw the movement. The flash of lightning illuminated the scene, a small figure battling the river to save his horse. "Anna!" he cried. He ran from the room, leaping down the stairs, ignoring Ophelia's shouts, asking where he was going. He ran out into the storm, rushing like a madman towards the creek. When he reached the bank, Anna was already hugging the colt's neck, trying to free the animal's leg, which was caught in the root. The water was rising fast. "Anna, let go of him. You'll drown," Charles cried, entering the water. "No, I won't let him die. He's important to you," Anna replied, spitting muddy water with superhuman effort, driven by a force only love and desperation give. Anna dove. She was submerged for seconds that seemed like hours. Charles advanced, water at his waist, his heart in his mouth. Suddenly, the colt lurched and broke free. Anna emerged, coughing, clinging to the animal's mane. Whirlwind, feeling free, swam to the bank, dragging Anna with him. They reached dry land and collapsed in the mud. The colt ran to the high paddock, safe. Anna lay there, breathing with difficulty, the blue dress, now brown and heavy, clinging to her body. Charles threw himself beside her, lifting her head. Anna, talk to me." "You're crazy. You could have died." Anna opened her eyes. They were red, swollen, but shone with a fierce dignity. "I'm not a thief, Mr. Charles. I might be poor, I might be a nobody, but I'd give my life for what's right. I saved what's yours. I'd never steal from you." Her words hit Charles with more force than the storm. He looked at that drenched woman, trembling with cold, who had just risked her life for one of his animals, even after being humiliated and expelled. The truth didn't need a fisherman's bend or witnesses. The truth was right there in the mud, in her eyes. Charles pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly, trying to transfer every bit of his warmth to her. I know. Anna, forgive me. My God, forgive me. I was a fool." He picked her up. She was light, fragile, but at the same time the strongest creature he had ever known. "Let's go home," he said. "I can't, Miss Ophelia. Miss Ophelia doesn't give orders anymore." "I do, and I'm taking you home." Charles walked back to the homestead, carrying Anna in his arms, the rain washing the mud from their bodies, but not the shame he felt for himself. When they entered the kitchen, wetting the whole floor, the maids gasped in surprise. Ophelia appeared at the top of the service stairs, holding a candlestick. Seeing Charles with Anna in his arms, her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "What is the meaning of this?" Ophelia cried. "You bring that drowned rat back inside, after she stole your mother's memory?" Charles stopped. He looked up at the woman who had raised him and, for the first time, saw her true face. "Shut up, Ophelia. Prepare hot water and dry clothes. Now." "I won't serve that thief." Ophelia descended a step, defiant. "If you insist on this madness, I'll leave, and I'll take what I know with me." Charles narrowed his eyes. "And what do you know?" Ophelia smiled, a cruel, victorious smile. "You think she just showed up here by chance? You think her uncle left her here out of charity?" Ophelia descended another step, her voice dropping to a poisonous whisper that echoed in the silent kitchen. "Ask her, Mr. Charles. Ask her mother's name, or better yet, ask why she has the same birthmark on her shoulder that your father had. The silence that followed was absolute. Not even the rain outside seemed to dare make a sound. Anna, in Charles's arms, trembled. I don't know what she's talking about, sir. I don't have any mark, just a little coffee-colored birthmark. Charles looked at Anna. Her torn dress on the shoulder revealed her skin, and there, small and discreet, was an irregular light brown mark. The same mark his father, the old man of Trinidad, had. The same mark Charles hadn't inherited, but knew well. Charles felt his legs weaken. He looked at Ophelia, who held her triumphant smile. "What are you saying, Ophelia?" Charles's voice was a mere thread. "I'm saying, Mr. Charles, that you're holding in your arms the living proof of your father's betrayal. This girl isn't just any servant. She's your sister, the bastard he tried to hide from the world, and who has now come back to steal what is rightfully yours." The world spun around Charles. Sister, that girl he was starting to feel something for. Something that went far beyond gratitude, something that made his blood run hot, was his sister. Anna looked at Charles, her eyes wide with terror. "No, it can't be, sir. I didn't know." Ophelia let out a dry cackle. "Blood doesn't lie, Mr. Charles. Now, the choice. Either you kick her out for good and bury this secret in the mud where she came from, or you accept her and stain your mother's memory forever with the proof of your father's infidelity." Charles looked at Anna, looked at the mark, looked at Ophelia. He was on a precipice. On one side, nascent love and justice. On the other, family honor and the memory of the mother he so revered. And in the middle of it all, Anna, trembling with cold and fear, realized the hole she was in was much deeper than she imagined. She wasn't just a rejected servant. She was the living sin of Trinidad Station. The silence that fell over Trinidad Station in the following days wasn't one of peace, but of death. It was a heavy, thick silence, like the mist that covered the paddocks on winter mornings. Charles walked the homestead corridors like a haunted soul. Ophelia's revelation had been a crushing blow to his heart, which had barely begun to heal. "Sister," the word echoed in his mind with every step, every beat of the pendulum clock in the hall. The woman for whom he'd felt an overwhelming attraction, the woman whose courage had made him want to live again, was his own flesh and blood. The horror of that possibility paralyzed him. He felt disgusted with himself, with the feelings he'd nurtured, with the glances they'd exchanged. Anna, in turn, had been reinstalled in the guest room, but now the door remained closed, not by a metal key, but by shame. Fever had taken hold of her the night after the colt's rescue. The cold of the creek and the emotional shock had broken her resistance. She burned with fever, delirious, calling out, sometimes for the mother she'd never known, sometimes for Charles, begging forgiveness for a sin she didn't even know existed. Ophelia cared for her, or rather, watched over her. The housekeeper came and went from the room with basins of water and cloths, maintaining a satisfied smile on her thin lips. For Ophelia, Anna's illness was providential. Perhaps God was finishing the job she'd started. "Drink up, girl," Ophelia would say, forcing bitter tea down Anna's throat. "Drink to cleanse that bad blood." Charles avoided the room. He couldn't bear to look at Anna and see his father's sin, and worse, his own. He spent his days locked in the late Mr. Thornton's office, rifling through papers, searching for anything that would confirm or deny Ophelia's story. But the records were vague. His father had been a private man. On the third night, Anna's fever worsened. Her moans cut through the walls and reached Charles's ears like knives. He couldn't take it. The humanity in him spoke louder than the shame. He went upstairs and entered the room. The smell of camphor and sickness permeated the air. Anna was pale, sweating cold, her hair matted to her forehead. Ophelia was sitting in a rocking chair, knitting, indifferent to the suffering. "How is she?" Charles asked, his voice hoarse. "She's paying for her sins, sir," Ophelia replied, without lifting her eyes from her needles. "Nature takes its course. Weak blood can't take the strain." Charles ignored the housekeeper and approached the bed. He touched Anna's forehead. It was burning. "Charles," Anna whispered in a delirium, opening her glazed eyes. "Don't let me go. I didn't want to be your sister. I wanted to be yours." The sentence died in a painful sigh. Charles felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. He snatched his hand away abruptly, as if he'd been burned. "Ophelia, call the town doctor now. Dr. Anderson doesn't come at this hour with this muddy road. And for what? To treat a bastard. Let nature take its course, Mr. Charles. It's better for everyone. If she goes, the secret goes with her." The coldness of that woman was the breaking point. Charles grabbed Ophelia by the arm, pulling her from the chair. You talk about her death as if it were a relief. Where is your soul, woman? My soul is clean, sir. I've protected the Trindade name for 30 years. It's you who's blind. For this dirty little thing. Charles let her go in disgust. Get out of here. I'll look after her. And tomorrow, as soon as the sun rises, I'm going to town. Not after the doctor, but after Father Michael. He's christened everyone in this region. If my father had a bastard child, the priest would know. Fear flashed in Ophelia's eyes, quick as lightning, but Charles saw it. The old priest is a bit senile, can't remember his own name half the time, she scoffed, trying to regain her composure. We'll see. Get out. Charles spent the night watching over Anna. He changed her cold compresses, held her hand when the nightmares came. He prayed. For the first time in years, Charles truly prayed. He didn't ask for miracles. He asked for the truth. Lord, if it's a sin to love her, tear this feeling from me, but don't let her die. At dawn, the fever subsided a little. Anna slept an exhausted sleep. Charles mounted his horse and set off for town, leaving old Ted on guard at Anna's bedroom door, with explicit orders not to let Ophelia enter. The ride to town was frantic. Charles arrived at the church, covered in mud. Father Michael, an 80-year-old man with skin as thin as paper, was in the sacristy polishing a chalice. Father, Charles entered, breathless. I need you to check the baptismal records right now. The priest adjusted his glasses, surprised. Steady on, son. What's this all about? It's about Anna, the girl who lives on my station. Ophelia says she's my father's daughter, says she has the Trindade mark. I need to know the truth, Father. I'm going crazy. Father Michael frowned, pausing the movement of the flannel over the chalice. Anna, the girl Joe, the foreman, brought in. Joe, the foreman? No, her uncle. Uncle? Nonsense. The priest sighed, setting the chalice down. Sit, Charles. I knew this day would come. Ophelia, that woman holds a lot of poison. Charles sat on the wooden bench, feeling his legs tremble. What do you know? I baptized Anna, and I buried her mum and dad on the same day. Typhoid fever took them both. Her father wasn't the old man, Mr. Thornton, Charles. Her father was Joe, the foreman, who saved your father's life in an ambush. Remember? Charles remembered. It was a story his father always told. Joe, the man who threw himself in front of a bullet to save his boss. But what about the mark? Charles insisted. Ophelia said she has the same birthmark on her shoulder that my father had. I saw the mark, Father. Father Michael smiled sadly. Charles, my boy, your father didn't have a birthmark. That on his shoulder was a burn scar from a gunpowder accident in his youth. Anna has a birthmark. Yes, it's common. Many people have them. Ophelia used a coincidence, or perhaps the ignorance of your childhood memory, to create a lie. Charles felt the world spin, but this time in the right direction. The weight of 1,000 tons lifted from his back. So, she's not my sister? No, Charles. She's the daughter of a hero who died for your family. Your father, the old man, promised to raise the girl as his own. He loved her dearly, said she was the light missing from the house after you went away to study. But Ophelia was in love with your father, Charles, a sick, silent love. She saw in little Anna the affection your father dedicated to someone else, even if it was paternal love. When your father died, Ophelia threw the girl into the kitchen and invented this distant uncle story to humiliate her. And now she's invented the kinship to drive you away. Charles stood up. The fury he felt now wasn't hot. It was cold, calculating, and relentless. Thank you, Father. You've just saved 2 lives. The ride back to the station was different. Charles no longer felt the tiredness, nor the mud. He felt urgency. He needed to get to Anna, needed to beg her forgiveness on his knees, needed to tell her he loved her, that she was free, that she was his, if she'd have him. As he galloped into the Trindade station yard, the sun was already high. He jumped from the still-moving horse and ran for the house. Ophelia, he cried, his voice echoing like thunder in the hall. The housekeeper appeared at the top of the stairs with her usual rigid posture. But seeing Charles's face, something in her wavered. She saw that he knew. Where is she? Charles asked, climbing the steps 2 at a time. In the room where you sent her, probably dying. Charles stopped on the last step, face to face with the woman who had governed his life and his house with an iron fist. It's over, Ophelia. I spoke with Father Michael. I know about Joe. I know about my father's scar. I know everything. Ophelia's face went white as wax. The mask fell. For the first time, pure, unfiltered hatred appeared in her eyes. That cursed old man, she hissed. You stole his love. Your father, he never looked at me. I dedicated my life to this house, to him, and he only had eyes for that daughter of a dirty foreman. He was going to leave land to her, Charles. He was going to adopt her legally. I couldn't allow Trindade Station to be divided with a nobody. The only nobody here is you, Ophelia, a nobody of soul, Charles said with a terrible calm. Get out of my house now. Don't take anything, not even your clothes. Leave with only the clothes on your back, exactly as you wanted Anna to live. You can't do this, sir. I have rights. You're lucky I'm not calling the police for fraud and cruelty. Get out of my face before I forget I'm a gentleman. Ophelia looked around. The other maids, who had been listening hidden, began to appear. Looks of disdain, of relief, of silent vengeance. Ophelia's empire had crumbled. She descended the stairs with her head held high, but with trembling hands. As she passed through the main door, the wind slammed shut, as if the house itself was spitting her out. Charles didn't wait to see her vanish down the road. He rushed to the guest room. Anna! He threw the door open. The room was empty. The bed was unmade, the window was open, curtains flapping in the breeze. On the pillow, the blue dress, the one he'd bought, the one that symbolized a fresh start, was carefully folded. On top of the dress was a piece of wrapping paper, written in a shaky, childish hand, the hand of someone who'd taught herself to write. Charles picked up the paper, his hands trembling. Mr. Charles, I can't be your shame. You were the light in my darkness, but I can't put out your light with my sin. Ophelia told me if I stayed, you'd lose everyone's respect. That the mark on my shoulder is the mark of betrayal. I'm leaving. Don't look for me. Let them think I died or ran away. It's my last gift to you, your freedom. I love you more than my own life. Anna. Charles crumpled the paper against his chest. A cry of despair caught in his throat. No, no, Anna, don't do this. He ran to the window, looked out at the vast horizon of the station, at the dense bush, at the endless road. She was sick, weak, with a fever. She couldn't have gone far, but where would she go? It was then that he remembered. There was a place she'd mentioned once when they looked at the station from the veranda. The old chapel, sir, up on the hill. My mother used to say God listened better to the poor up there. The Chapel of Souls, a ruin on the highest, most isolated point of the property. Charles didn't think. He didn't call anyone. He jumped out the window, landing in the garden, and ran. He ran as he'd never run in his life. The sky darkened again, heavy clouds forming. Hold on, Anna, he thought, his heart pounding with the rhythm of his steps. Just hold on a little longer. I'm coming, and this time nothing will separate us. But as Charles raced against time, in the old, ruined chapel, Anna was kneeling before a broken altar. The fever made her tremble violently. She held a small kitchen knife she'd brought with her, not to hurt anyone, but because Ophelia had told her the only way to cleanse the family's honor was for the bad blood to stop flowing. Anna's mind, clouded by illness and Ophelia's lies, saw it as a sacrifice of love. Forgive me, Lord, she whispered, tears mixing with cold sweat. I just want him to be happy. The sound of hooves or footsteps was far away. The silence of the chapel was absolute. Anna closed her eyes. Would Charles arrive in time to prevent the lie from claiming its last and most terrible victim? The wind howled around the Chapel of Souls, as if 1,000 ancient laments had awakened. The stone walls, ruins of a forgotten time, offered no shelter against the biting cold that invaded her bones. Anna lay collapsed before the broken altar, the small kitchen knife thrown beside her, untouched. The courage for the final act had failed her, or perhaps deep down, the spark of life still fought against the darkness of the lie. But the cold and the fever were doing the work the blade had not. She felt her body grow numb, her fingertips were purple, her breathing a faint wheeze. In her delirious mind, she saw the mother she'd never known, reaching out her arms. Come, my child, come and rest. The burden is too heavy. I'm coming, Anna whispered, her cracked lips barely moving. Mr. Charles, be happy. It was at that instant, on the threshold between here and the beyond, that a crash broke through the sound of the storm. The old chapel door was kicked open. A silhouette appeared against the lightning flashes. A drenched man, chest heaving with exhaustion, but with the stance of a warrior defying death itself. Anna! Charles's cry filled the chapel louder than the thunder. He ran to the altar, falling to his knees beside her. When he touched Anna's face, he felt the chill of death approaching. No, no, no. Charles pulled her into his arms, clutching her against his wet chest, trying to transfer every bit of his warmth to her. Wake up, Anna, for heaven's sake, wake up. Anna opened her eyes with difficulty. Her vision was blurred, but she recognized his scent. The smell of rain, of earth, and of something she could only call home. "Sir," she murmured, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "You shouldn't be here. The sin, the mark." "There's no sin, Anna," Charles cried, holding her face between his hands, forcing her to look at him. "It's a lie. All Ophelia's lies. You're not my sister." The information took a moment to penetrate Anna's fevered mind. "What? You're not my father's daughter. You're Joe's daughter, the foreman who saved his life. The mark on your shoulder is yours, only yours. My father didn't have a birthmark. It was a scar. Ophelia invented everything out of jealousy, because my father loved you like a daughter, but he never loved her." Anna blinked, the warm tears beginning to wash the terror from her eyes. I'm not your blood? No. You're the blood of a hero, Anna, and you're the woman I love. Do you hear me? I love you, not as a brother, but as a man, and I won't let you die for a lie." Charles lifted her into his arms, ignoring his exhaustion, ignoring the ache in his muscles. He carried her out of the chapel, into the storm that now seemed to be lessening, as if the truth had calmed the skies. He placed her on his horse and mounted behind her, shielding her with his body all the way back. When they arrived at the homestead, the scene was different. There was no longer the silence of death. The windows were illuminated. Old Ted and the other maids waited on the veranda with blankets and hot water. Ophelia was no longer there. Her shadow had been banished forever. Charles entered with Anna in his arms, and this time no one looked with disdain. They looked with hope. "Look after her," Charles ordered, his voice thick with emotion. "Look after her as if she were the queen of this house, because she is." The days that followed were a silent battle. Pneumonia tried to take Anna, but love is a powerful remedy. Charles didn't leave her side. He read to her, held her hand, told her stories about her father, stories Father Michael had told him. He returned to Anna not just her health, but her history, her identity. When the fever finally subsided on a sunny Sunday morning, Anna woke and saw Charles sleeping in the armchair beside the bed, holding her hand. She squeezed his fingers lightly. Charles woke with a start. Seeing Anna's eyes clear, without the fog of illness, he smiled. A smile that lit up the room more than the sun outside. "Good morning, my brave one," he said. "Good morning, Charles," she replied. Without the "sir," the barrier had fallen. "I have something for you." Charles took a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside wasn't a diamond ring, but something much more valuable. His mother's mother, of pearl rosary. "Ophelia tried to use this to destroy us," he said, placing the rosary in Anna's hands. "But now, I want it to be a symbol of our union. My mother would be proud to see this rosary in the hands of the woman who saved her son from loneliness." Anna kissed the rosary, and then kissed Charles's hand. "I have nothing to give you, Charles, only my life. Your life is all I need." They kissed there in that room that had been the stage for so much pain, and was now the cradle of a new life. It was a soft kiss, tasting of promise, of healing, and of eternity. Time, my friends, is the ultimate judge, and the gardener of our destinies. 5 years passed at Trindade Station, and anyone seeing the place today wouldn't recognize the sad land of yesteryear. The cattle pastures were thriving, a sea of green and red stretching to the horizon. The homestead garden, once abandoned, was now an explosion of colors, personally tended by the lady of the house. Anna stood on the veranda, watching the sunset. She wore a simple but elegant white linen dress. Her hair was loose, swaying in the gentle breeze. She no longer had that frightened, hunted animal look. Her eyes shone with the serenity of someone who knows who she is and where she belongs. "Mum, Mum." A 4-year-old boy, with Charles's dark hair and Anna's honey-colored eyes, came running across the lawn, holding a puppy. "Careful, little Joe. Don't squeeze the little fella." Anna laughed, crouching down to hug her son. Little Joe, named in honor of his hero grandfather whom he never knew, was the joy of the house. He had his father's energy and his mother's sweetness. Charles appeared right behind, coming in from work on the land. He no longer wore the stiff suits of a city lawyer. He wore boots, work trousers, and a cotton shirt. The sun had tanned his skin, and the work on the land had strengthened his body and soul. He approached and embraced Anna and their son, forming a knot that no one, not even the greatest of storms, could untie. "Old Ted said this year's muster will be the biggest ever," Charles said, kissing the top of Anna's head. "God is good," she replied. "And Ophelia?" Charles asked in a softer tone, as if the name were an ancient shadow. "Heard anything?" Anna sighed, looking at the horizon. "Father Michael said he saw her in the next town over. She's living on charity in a small room behind the church, alone. Bitter. They say she talks to herself, repeating that the station is hers." Charles shook his head. Her punishment is her own company. We have something she never had and never will. Peace. Anna stood up and took her husband's hand. Let's go inside. Dinner's ready. And tonight, I made damper, the kind you like. Charles smiled, remembering that first night in the kitchen, when a piece of damper and a gesture of kindness changed the course of their lives. Let's go. I'm hungry. Hungry for life. They entered the illuminated house, where the laughter of a child and the smell of warm food chased away any ghosts of the past. Trindade Station was no longer an empire of loneliness. It was a home. And so, my friends, ends the story of Anna and Charles. A story that began with scraps and ended with abundance. An abundance of love, of truth, and of hope. Do you believe that love can be born from despair? Do you believe that, however dark the night, the truth always brings the dawn? Anna's story teaches us that our origin does not define our destiny. What defines who we are is the courage to love and the strength to forgive. Ophelia thought she could control destiny with lies, but she forgot that true love is like a river. It always finds its way, no matter how many stones are in its bed. If this story touched your heart, if you cried, smiled, and rooted for this happy ending, I ask you with all my heart, leave your comment below. Tell me what you thought, where you're from, and if you've ever experienced a fresh start in your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the Heartfelt Tales channel and hit the bell icon. Every week we bring stories that embrace the soul and warm the heart. Share this video with anyone who needs a word of faith today. God bless you, and until the next story. Because here at Heartfelt Tales, a happy ending is just the beginning of a new journey.